It's a major gamble. In a way, this snap election was expected, and in a way, it wasn't because of the timing. So since 2022, President Macron has been working with a minority government. And so there were expectations that at some stage he would call for a snap dissolution of the National Assembly, the lower house in Australia. But nobody was expecting that it would happen immediately after a European election, because European issues are different to French national issues, right? So we were thinking that there would be a dissolution at some stage, but the timing came to everybody as a surprise. Now, we know that for the president, it wasn't a surprise because the results of the elections were announced at 8 p.m. And by 9 p.m., he was giving what we call an allocution, a grand speech to the French nation. And in the meantime, he had to consult with the presidents of two chambers and his prime minister. So the plans were in track. It's a surprise for us, the public, but he was certainly prepared.
Do you think it was to catch off guard Marine Le Pen? She may be unprepared, of course, she's garnered a lot of the vote in terms of if you're looking at it from an EU point of view, but will she make those inroads from a national point of view?
Well, look, I think that speaks to the idea of gamble here, because the move that Monsieur Macron has pulled last night is daring, to say the least. So I believe that what he's trying to do by calling an election this quickly, by law, when you dissolve the National Assembly, you got to call an election within 20 days and no more than 40 days. So it has to be short and snap and sweet. But there might be a reason for the timing. Most parties have spent a lot of money running for the European election. And so now they're out of puff. They've run as much as they could. They've spent the money, meaning that the battle will be between adversaries that are tired. And that might be quite effective.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting point I haven't heard made. The Paris Olympics, to try and fit in an election before the Games with security so heightened, is that a complication at this point?
Look, I don't think so. The part of the administration that deals with election has been doing so for centuries now. So calling elections is one thing. I don't think that will impact the Olympics. And in a way, Macron had to do that before the Olympics and also before Bastille Day, which is probably more important for the French, really. Now, with regard to the organization of the Olympics, whatever happens on the 7th of July when France has a new government, the people who are in charge of its organizing won't change. Those are not ministers, they are civil servants. So they will be the same people. It's well underway, and for any Australians who is going to Paris very soon, make sure that you get one of your QR codes, because you will not be able to access the Seine River anywhere near it without one because of very, very strict security measures.
Yeah, the security is incredibly heightened, obviously, with terror threats. Let's talk a moment about what has happened for the European elections. I guess the EU was very supportive of a climate change agenda. Do you think that is going to be impacted by this now high right-wing vote?
So luckily what is happening in France with this election doesn't have a major impact because Europe is far bigger. And so I'm talking on two levels here. For France, these results are shocking. They really are. The National Rally is the hair of the National Front. These are people who denied the Holocaust, who were involved against the resistance. I'm not going to get into that background, but the outcome is shocking. About 37% of the French supported a far-right party. The good part of the story is that that's not the picture for most of the rest of Europe. And so, except for Germany and France, where you see more of the far right, for the rest of the European Union, the new parliament, the last one was elected in 2019, so 5 years ago, the new parliament will have a very slightly increased position of the far right, but it's below 24% at most if you take all of the far right and hard right groups. It's less than 24% than the entire parliament. The European Parliament will remain slightly more to the right, a moderate right, with a large centre that usually aligns with the moderate right, and then there is a strong section of the moderate left. So the extremes, the far left is much lower than the far right, but Europe will be ruled at the centre.
Yeah, in the centres. And I guess, too, it's not clear yet how they're not, it is not all just one right-wing bloc. They all have different agendas and different views on topics like climate change, Ukraine, for example.
Absolutely. And that's, I'm being a bit cynical here, but that's the beauty of the far right. It's because they're nationalist. They all want different things. So even though they've got the same sticker, far right, they all go left, right and centre, and they're usually not very good at working with one another. So that it is, in a way, it's a chance for democracy and for the moderate parties from the left, centre and right. But it would be interesting to see whether the far right, if it was able to unite, and I doubt that, then yes, it would have a very strong weight on the future of the European Union.
Yeah. Romain, appreciate your time, and we'll watch with interest as these French elections get underway.
Thank you very much.